Wow. There's so many games out there. I wouldn't know where to start. Well, hello, you've come to the right place. Who are you? That is not important. You have stumbled upon video game paradise. Go through a door and it will take you on a magnificent journey. Well, I struggle with decisions, so trust me. Pick a door. Any door. I pick this one, I guess PS2, it's the closest, so, but is this safe? Wonderful choice. Thanks? Wait, I went through this door just so I could find more doors? Is this a scam or something? No, bear with me. Patience and all that. More doors equals more opportunity. Let me help you. I'll take you through each one. I mean, how long is this gonna take? I was gonna go and it'll be very worth it. So, the PS2 is home to a fantastic library of hits. There are so many classic games on the platform that have made such an impact, so much so that people are still huge fans of them to this day, and rightly so. The design of games on the PS2 is one of my favourites. We are getting to that stage where so many developers, especially indie, are being highly influenced by the graphics and style of these retro games, and it's definitely for a reason. With horror in particular, there is something about that lack of realism that increases that eerie feeling of the unknown, and there are a huge range of covers we can look at. First of all, look at the suffering. This is a fairly visceral cover, and I mean, no one appears to be having a good time. I mean, they don't appear to be having a good time on this other cover either. In fact, I would argue that they look even worse. The face is a little goofy, but the hand reaching out is pretty effective. They are calling out for you to buy the game so you can help them survive. Guilt tripping, essentially. The loading screens showcase a bit of storytelling. I much prefer loading screens that have their own style and something to read or even do. And when it comes to the design of the creatures, Stan Winston Studios, the Oscar-winning designers behind The Thing, Predator, Aliens, etc., was involved in the creation. They are pretty gruesome, disturbing designs, and overall the game is said to be an underrated horror masterpiece. There's also this magazine ad that has stunning lighting, despite the fact that the subject matter is quite grim. And yeah, I personally think that the font can hint at what kind of game you're playing. Something big and bold like this may suggest a very in-your-face type of game, whereas text that uses thinner letters or disintegrating letters may hint at something more spooky or supernatural. Instead of red for blood, we have red for text on the cover for obscure. Red usually signifies death and blood and horror, therefore I think you can use pure white backgrounds really effectively. Other examples of white backgrounds on PS2 covers include Final Fantasy, Gran Turismo, Hitman 2, and for obscure I think the white background works great with this ghostly presence. It's wonderfully spooky. The main menu also has this spooky feeling to it. It's very dark and ominous, but luckily the loading screen has a flashlight, so hooray, we're saved. Obscure 2 as well has such a great composition with this hand. It resembles a spider to me. Overall, I recommend these two games. I love them, and the style of the cutscenes is top tier 2000s pre-rendered FMV goodness. The contrast between the white background and the red text for Indigo Prophecy / Fahrenheit is also really cool. It looks like it was used for posters as well, and I think the composition just works perfectly. Here we have words like guilt and fear and dead. I like how there's a smudgy reflection of the letters 2. The game Ghost Vibration has that kind of effect as well. And Indigo Prophecy is from the developers Quantic Dream. Quantic Dream have other great covers, by the way, such as this one for Heavy Rain and this awesome one for The Nomad Soul. Oh look, red! Red is a pattern with horror. I knew it! Well, at least this version of the Resident Evil 4 cover anyway. There's also a black and white version on the Wii and another version with our main guy Leon on the cover, and I think the one with Leon on this one hints a little bit more at the story and gameplay, you know, with the main character aiming into the distance, past our shoulder at zombies, which are no doubt trying to eat everything. The cover for Cold Fear has a similar setup, it's almost like a mirror image, although I prefer like the zombie arm being in the foreground. It creates a bit more depth, if you will. Anyway, this red cover for Resi 4 is way more mysterious and frankly just stands out that bit more. It's so stylish in my opinion, and I think a lot of people do prefer this cover. There are a lot of different cover options for Resi 4 though, including a steelbook, and of course it is all down to personal preference which one you like. Most of them accomplish what they were set out to do though, and this inside manual makes me laugh because Leon looks like he's in some sort of photo shoot showing off a new jacket. We have horror covers with close-up faces, because nothing is spookier than being this close to another person. I like that both these covers for Kuon and Silent Hill 2 have the face slightly obscured in some way. It makes it that little bit more scary, and for Kuon it's one of those rare times where the title of the game is placed vertically rather than horizontally. Kuon has some incredible style. Everything from the costumes to the setting, I think incorporating traditional Japanese elements is absolutely stunning. I love it when Japanese games have this. Take Yakuza or Okami as well, both beautifully designed covers. This particular disc art for Kuon is also very worth showing. Look at this. I think it's interesting to see the difference between the eye lines as well, as in this one they are looking directly towards you whilst the other is looking away, and I think one feels more mysterious and forlorn whereas the other feels a bit more creepy, intrusive, and it's like the character is watching you from the shadows. And I really like appreciating the atmosphere and feeling a single image can create with the subtlest of ideas. And I would like to point out that both of these covers are the American versions. The Japanese cover for Kuon is very similar to the title screen in the game, and perhaps they thought this cover would appeal more to Asian audiences instead of something else, I'm not really sure. The Japanese Silent Hill 2 cover is actually something I'm not a fan of personally, but that horrifying red is in there, and you also can't forget this looking through the letterbox version. This magazine ad I found for Silent Hill 2 is also kind of funny in the sense that even though it's such a well detailed and drawn piece of artwork, it doesn't really fit the tone of the game, but it's bold, and these kind of artistic covers still do have their place. I personally think this particular Silent Hill 3 cover is the one I like best, since it matches well with this Silent Hill 2 cover, and it has that creepy painting feel. It reminds me of Layers of Fear. For some reason always comes into my head when I look at this. And it's similar to covers such as Clock Tower 3, Haunting Ground, which also has a dog, bonus, and Fatal Frame. My favourite cover is this Japanese version, but this one has that close-up, and this seems to be really common with horror covers. Perhaps the goal is to make you feel up close and personal with the character, almost like you're enclosed in a claustrophobic space with them, or make you try and feel what they're feeling, or perhaps it's so you can see their facial expression as clearly as possible. If the character looks worried or scared, then you wonder why they're feeling that way, you maybe want to help them, I don't know, and horror games just have that goal of making you feel a lot, you know? This Japanese cover has more of an action film feel to it to me, and squares. The Japanese covers for the first 3 games have a lot of squares for some reason, but anyway, the Silent Hill games really mastered this grimy, dark, tattered, grainy effect and created such a creepy, dark atmosphere that, in my opinion, isn't quite matched today. You can't get much closer than this cover of The Fear, which is a pretty unique Japanese horror FMV game, and Manhunt 2 has a really creepy close-up of an eye as well, and it's just an insane amount of detail. Good job, Manhunt team. And of course there's also the first Manhunt. This might be one of the creepiest covers out there. I don't think this cover would be as effective if it wasn't edited this way. The fact when you first look at this cover you can't really make out what this is meant to be, it makes it all the more creepy. There of course can be quite a big difference between Japanese, European and American covers, and I think it's interesting when you see how perhaps the culture and intended audience changes the style that gets designed. I really like the American cover for Siren. I think it shows off that freaky aspect of the game, and I really like the font. Keeping the Japanese lettering in here is a nice touch, and knowing the game, it definitely makes sense to have a lot of grain and for the character to be kind of ambiguous. Rule of Rose has a unique cover in the horror world. I absolutely love that the disc art has these butterflies on it. This is really pretty. And it's not often that you see so much detail on every single letter. It's all like it's from a diary, and the papery texture resembles that also. To my knowledge, this whole cover alludes to a lot of elements in the game, and I think it's great when covers do that without giving too much away. You may know that the whole game was controversial upon release, but including the magazine advertisements, the whole design of the game is very impactful. I think so many horror games can be so artistically amazing. They can have such beautiful pieces of artwork, ranging from the concept art to even the loading screens, the magazine advertisements. I think that's why also PS2 horror still has a huge following. A lot of these covers will just go down in history. We have covers now that are more fantasy or gothic-y. They're on the fantasy gothic side. They lean towards the purple tones and include items like chains and castles and vampires. For Shadow Hearts, you can have this version of the CDR or the orange version. I do think this cover is a little bit funny, mainly because of this dude's head in the background floating in the air. It kind of reminds me of that one song. I do love the all-around gothic vibes here though, the fog and the purple tones and the outfits. I really love appreciating the intricate details when it comes to committing to a genre and style, because the little details you add to that can make all the difference. The white glow around the text, for example, and around the characters, it helps make that silhouette readable. It's just showing off the graphics for all to see. Caballista on the PS1 was the foundation for Shadow Hearts, and there's also a sequel called Shadow Hearts Covenant and a third game called Shadow Hearts from the New World. From the creators of Silent Hill comes the perplexing Shadow of Memories, set in a German town. This game has cool disc design, it's a clock, and the clock is on the cover too, so it must be important. Yeah, it is important. The game features time travel. I really like the main menu screen for this game, and this particular style is on the cover of the Japanese version of the game, and the whole pencil look is such a unique artistic direction. I really wanted to find out who did these particular artworks, but I couldn't confirm anything, unfortunately. There also seems to be this advertisement in the form of a tombstone, very intriguing, kind of morbid, but very intriguing. And of course, we can't forget vampires. For the light gun game Vampire Knight, I like how the enemies get a place on the cover too, like a sweet family photo. I think the long coats and the symmetrical poses and the whole composition of this one is great. And the original arcade version has such a cool gothic look to it as well. I like it when you can tell that the stylization has been done with a purpose. It matches the game, it matches the story, it's dedication to a vibe. The main menu screen is basically a moon. I think the moon makes a really great backdrop because it is so big and bright, and then whatever you put in front, it's like blam. And it stands out. Based on a movie, Underworld: The Eternal War is another example of the moon being the entire background. But this one has a faint shadow inside. Ooh. Staying on vampires, I would probably get some hate if I didn't cover the covers for Castlevania, because also look how gorgeous these are. You can't miss an opportunity either to feature an artist like Ayami Kojima. All of the artwork she's done for Castlevania is beautiful. The amount of detail, the style, the textures, the expressions she manages to convey, and it manages to be so elegant too, and I wish this kind of artwork and illustration was utilised for covers more. And I also personally want to do better at just appreciating artists for video games, such as Yoshitaka Amano as well, who has done artwork for Final Fantasy. Again, it's stunning and truly unforgettable. Lament of Innocence and Curse of Darkness obviously look amazing next to each other. They would be perfect physical games to display on a shelf. Darkwatch is a perfect option for a vampire game. I think it even has steampunk elements, and I think this is a sick cover. Can you tell that I'm running out of adjectives? I love how we have this cool whooshing effect, which you can follow around to the primary focus, which is the dude's hat maybe, or his eye, the guns, or just everything. There's also those light rays coming through the bullet holes in his cape. All of those little details have created something truly awesome, and you can assume a lot about the character. Maybe you could also include Van Helsing here as a similar option. Next we have a game called Trapped. Here we go again with a dark night sky and a gothic looking building, glowy text outlines, a very fashionable outfit if I do say so myself. The advertisement reads, "Hell hath no fury like a woman scorned." Like, how extravagant is that? And the font is so gothic. There's words like betrayal, jealousy, murder floating around along with friendship? I love PS2 advertisements so much. And in this menu screen, I want to visit this place. It's spooky. I like the smoke/fog that's wafting in from the side. The design in the menus I absolutely adore. There's a lot of subtle detail, clearly influenced by Gothic / fantasy and medieval stuff. It's a vibe I really like to see on the PS2. I'd also put games like Vagrant Story in a similar vein, maybe even games like Primal, another great game. It definitely has that fantasy Gothic influence in it as well. What I love about the dark fantasy genre in games is that they have so many aspects of Gothic aesthetics but also horror elements, and the games can be bleak and gloomy, and not saying that that matches my personality or anything, but you know, it's just a mood. Like Drakengard is also just a mood. Devil May Cry is an obvious example as well. We all know that this series is extremely stylish. Originally developed as a Resident Evil game, it was eventually rewritten into what we know today as Devil May Cry. This is one of those games where you could talk about the style of the game in a full video of its own. Similar to a decent chunk of PS2 games, this game was also just so impressive for its time. It's a perfect example of how Gothic style and action and horror can merge together to create something really legendary. Savage by nature. These advertisements keep getting better and better. Chaos Legion doesn't fall into a separate chaotic game category as you may think, but this game is a Gothic opera. So there's really no surprise that there's this really cool castle looking place shown off in the beginning, and this game is also based on a series of light novels. And yeah, I want to finish up here with Gungrave, actually. The cover for Gungrave is distinctive. The drawing itself is epic. Look at the way these guns are pointed towards you. It really feels like this dude is just going to fly out of the cover at any moment. Now that's something that makes you excited for action. And I mean, to be honest, you can't have a game with gun in the title without having a gun as part of the design. Like with Gun, for example. This one is particularly satisfying with how symmetrical it is. Anyway, back to Gungrave. The game itself is high up there in terms of its presentation. We also have Gungrave Overdose, which also has this extremely poppy cover. The designer for Gungrave is none other than Yasuhiro Naito, who is known for creating Trigun. But yeah, I just really wanted to mention this one. Instead of the horror reds and the gothic purples, there's a few different ways that sci-fi / futuristic stuff can look. Perhaps there are matrix greens, which signify something more dystopian, or perhaps it's a shinier and polished look with whites and silvers and blues. And I think overall this kind of futuristic, kind of Y2K futurism look is one of my favourites. I like the incorporation of futuristic designs and CGI, and the cool colour schemes to feel very satisfying to look at. For example, the menu design of Final Fantasy XIII is another prime example of this. But on the PS2 we have this game that's a bit different to that. Chain Dive has all the greens. This is a really interesting game with the kind of main menu that reminds you of how the original Xbox looked. And I mean, look at the back cover too, it's even more green. There's this apocalyptic darkness to the whole atmosphere as well, which makes it feel like something is happening in secret or underground. A very clear entry for this futuristic category though is the Xenosaga series. I think this particular cover is so sleek, and looking at all of the games in the series next to each other, this is peak design, very harmonious. If you didn't know, Xenosaga is part of the overarching Xeno series, which also includes Xenogears and Xenoblade. I just love it when characters pose with items or objects. It's like this character has come along to specifically show off their alien-looking bike. Xenosaga has sliding doors, the echoes of footsteps running down an intensely polished silver corridor, blinding white lights. And overall, some of the renders for this game are really ethereal and almost angelic looking. Sometimes there's this galaxy effect as well, and I just think it's such a great representation of early 2000s futuristic sci-fi on the PS2. I really don't think I can get over this cover art though. I love the colour scheme, the composition, and the way that old CGI made hair look. Alongside that, we also have EOE, Eve of Extinction. Here we have an advertisement that reads, "Variety is the spice of death." Whatever that means. I like this particular cover though because you don't often see a character in this like high contrast black and white style like Mad World on the Wii, or there is Max Payne 2 that kind of does this, but doing this and then adding some of this lightning in the background, just it shouts striking action, which I'm sure the game has buckets of. It's quite common in this category to have characters with their back towards you, by the way.
Give me a break.
There's also this cover which kind of looks more like something inspired by Star Wars. Phase Paradox also has a very sleek main menu. It's in that magical realm of PS2 menus that have that minimalistic feel but also somehow have ounces of design. I think there's just something about disintegrating letters that just feels right. I don't know, I really like it. I think it's the kind of cover that if you saw it in a game store, you'd be immediately intrigued, alongside the, really cool game title that helps too. And I'm clearly not any kind of design expert, but this feels very well balanced. Here's a quote about the game. Gameplay is handled mostly by choices made during cutscenes, and the end result feels more like an interactive movie than a game. This game is interesting as well because it was voiced originally all in English despite it not being released outside of Japan. There's a couple instances of this happening, I think. So yeah, I would personally like to look into this game more. I'm quite curious about it. Lifeline/Operator's Side is a really interesting post-modernism game influenced by augmented reality, and I'm super happy to bring it up. Behold, a game where you use a microphone. There's a few like these I've seen over the years, and even if they don't work perfectly, they're super fun to look into. The majority of the gameplay involves the player issuing commands. There are actually a few other unique PS2 games that also use a microphone. During my Japanese learning days, I used to find all kind of funny Let's Play videos in Japanese, and therefore I stumbled upon games that are more obscure to the West. For example, Shibai Michi is a really fun party game where you read scripts and act out the lines and get graded with your friends. The box art is fun, it feels very party gamey and gets the point across. Although prefer the box art for the game Deca Voice, a detective noir game, also with Aibo compatibility. Yes, Aibo as in the robot dog. I'm not entirely sure how it works, but it does look fun. And lastly, Dream Audition, which plays similarly to a karaoke game, and obviously we also had loads of karaoke games on the PS2 as well. It's also hard not to briefly mention Nude here, which despite what you may initially think, it's actually an Xbox game, which stands for Natural Ultimate Digital Experiment. This is one of my favourite covers ever, which is why I'm bringing it up briefly, but also you can use the Xbox voice communicator to issue voice commands to the robot in the game. And I feel like at the time, maybe they thought this microphone thing would take off a lot more and games would use this mechanic more. I don't know, that I only really see it with certain horror games recently where you have to keep quiet and try not to get jump scared if you accidentally breathe too hard. Anyway, back to Lifeline. The Japanese cover has way more of those futuristic tones and elements that make it fit snug into this category next to the other games. Galarian's Ash has a very zoomed in blue cover, quite a bit more atmospheric than the first Galarian's game. I also like how the face is used again on the back. All I can hear is "you cannot escape" or something. The point is, it's very bold, and having something as close up as this is really strong and bold for box art, like I mentioned back in the horror category, which is funny because this game does have survival horror elements. There's a handful of artwork from Galarians that I absolutely adore, and I think it's just another game that's on my list of games to look into more when I have the time. As for something else unique, we have Code Age Commanders, and this one has layers like a cake. There's like 5 layers making up the center basically. There's like the background, then the character, then another character, logo, then title, and it's pretty satisfying to layer up a cover like this. It also has all those shades of futuristic blues that I was talking about as well, and the main menu has those sound effects that really make me feel nostalgic and happy, and I don't know what exactly the sound is, but I just remember it making option selecting really enjoyable. And we have something like Psy Girls, which is just a fun one, isn't it? It continues that trend of having a person standing with their back to you, but we also have the bonus of a person shooting a gun directly to the side of us as well, so hooray! I really like the red and the blue on this one as well. Maybe it's a reference to The Matrix. The game had mixed reception, but I do like this cover. When I had a look at the game, I also really like the FMV cutscene. It's exactly the kind of style I like, so I don't know, maybe I'll give this game a go. I haven't played it before, so. Deus Ex also fits here, an obvious classic. Warren Spector was the director and producer for Deus Ex, and he also happened to be the creative director for Epic Mickey, which design is one of my favourites. And I didn't want to leave out PN03, which is on the GameCube, but I couldn't not show you this cover. I love this "look at my hand" pose going on. Anyway, moving swiftly on. Sporty covers tend to include a bit more colour, but also more importantly, action shots, which of course makes a lot of sense. These kind of covers need to show the excitement of action and sport and movement and whatnot, you know? First there's Airblade, which has this layering system going on in the design. I didn't notice at first, but there's faint buildings in the backgrounds here, then we have the silhouette / shadow, and then a character on top inside of the shadow. We also have some effects for effect, which gives it more of a rough feel, which I think is quite common to have that kind of rough feel to sports covers, if that makes any sense. This style is also carried over into the game itself, for example in the main menus, and these kind of main menus feel so nostalgic. It has that Tony Hawk's Pro Skater feeling to it, and actually this is very similar to Tony Hawk now looking at it. Tony Hawk's Underground has that silhouette thing going on the cover as well, which I think is cool. It makes it a bit easier to read what sport is going on, and therefore you can know what kind of game you're going to be playing. This has a bit more personality than, say, you know, just slapping a skateboard on the cover. Oh, wait. Right. American Wasteland has a cool cover too. I mean, you can't really go wrong with putting Tony Hawk's face on the cover or something. I also always really liked this shade of pink for some reason. Love this artwork from the game as well. It's exactly the kind of graphic design you'd expect on the back of a skateboard deck, and I managed to find the artist for this one, I believe, Jimbo Phillips. On his website it says, in 2005 my art was featured on Tony Hawk American Wasteland video game for the Xbox and PlayStation 2, where the game weaves in and out of my comic book format. And yeah, good job, it's awesome. Silhouettes can be a cool design for covers, especially on top of a solid colour. Dave Mirror Freestyle BMX 2, that's a mouthful, has this. Funnily enough, the US cover has the same design but not in silhouette form. It's a cool trick either way. Another example of an action shot is from the SSX games, especially SSX 3. I love this cover. I love the snow that's really aggressively flying forward. I love the giant bold letters with the bold outline, the hat, the flow of the hair, the pose, the board, all of it is really rad. The back cover shows off the game very well too. I like this design. To be honest, I think I'm being very positive about all of the designs, really. But you know, positivity, not a bad thing. Sticking to snowboarding, we also have Dark Summit, which has a couple of covers, in fact. One has a giant logo, and I think it's great to try and summarize a game into a straightforward design like this. Like, this could be an emblem or a badge or a t-shirt design or, I don't know, a tattoo. I think it's just nice to see something other than like a CG character just posing. Why they made the sky red, I don't know, but it is a tad ominous. But hey, it intrigues you to play. The game itself has heaps of style, and this is what I love about retro sports games, or even like puzzle games and racing games. A lot of them had a lot to offer other than the sport itself. There were stories and unique styles and a variety of characters to choose from, and really fun character selection screens and music and all of this. And I don't want to say it, but this kind of charm and excitement from this genre has kind of been a bit lost over time. And I mean, you just really can't go wrong with spaghetti hair. Let's keep on this fast and speedy action train. This is Kinetica, and I have never seen a title look as slick as this. This is basically showing you that if you like high speed and streamlined kinetic suits, then this is the game for you. There's this arcadey style of selection screen, and it's clearly meant to be a fun futuristic game but also a bit challenging. And I mean, what would these kind of games be if there wasn't at least the slightest bit of challenge in there? One of the main artists for this game also did some additional artwork for God of War, so that's a fun fact for you there. Also an epic cover. I like the added detail of blurred lines to make something seem like it's going super duper fast. And yeah, I think the closest game to Kinetica is Wipeout, maybe. Wipeout obviously being known for being fast along with Sonic. This Wipeout cover isn't quite as sleek or futuristic in design as some other Wipeout covers, but it is a fun one. It's colourful, there's an explosion in the background, there's this guy's face. What more could you want, really? Okay, now there's definitely something here about orange. All three of these covers have orange in them, and I guess colour does get associated with certain feelings and aesthetics, and this video is proving as much. Free Running has those blurry, fast lines as well that I was talking about. Let's hope that guy made it. Look at the danger. Rebellion. Getting Up has that orange too, and the pose, and it's a game about graffiti. It's a hidden gem. for sure. Lastly, Freak Style. This guy's face is a little scary, but I promise you this isn't a horror game. I enjoy the poppy colours here, here and here. The designers clearly liked fire effects as well, and I love this character selection screen, and this is what I mean about these sports games having a lot of personality in them on the PS2. I'm also surprised I've never heard of this game before, but it looks like something I would have really enjoyed as a kid and still would enjoy now. So, looking at this, I think this will lead us straight onto Poppy 2D. Poppy 2D is such a fun one to look at simply because of colours, and this is really where colour choice shines through, and the style of 2D can be so broad. Kuri Kuri Mix has two rabbits with bold outlines and bold colours that all fit well together like a collage. This is the Japanese version of the game The Adventure of Cookies and Cream, which actually does use CG on the cover. They're very, very different covers, and that goes for the disc art as well, but surprise if you didn't know, this is a FromSoft game. Clearly this game is what they should be known for, you know, not Dark Souls or whatever it's called. FromSoft also made that game Kuon as well that I talked about earlier, and I just think their range is really impressive. Well, especially this era. Playing through the PS2 FromSoft games would probably give you Whiplash or something. FromSoft also developed the PS2 game Evergrace, which I really like this cover for. I don't know why, I just think this character design is really wonderful. Back to Cookies and Cream though, look at these wallpapers, this is why art is so fun. You wouldn't hate a game about two bunnies, would you? Chulip is another quirky game you may have heard of. One cover is really cute with its design, but the other feels very nostalgic and almost melancholic in nature. It's a game where you have found the girl of your dreams and you have to earn smooches, as it says on the back cover. And you know what's crazy about this game is that this is the first game from the developers that made Roll of Rose. Yes, that controversial horror game from earlier. And I mean, the leap between these two games, which are only 4 years apart by the way, is just super cool to see, and I can't explain it fully, but a lot of these games just feel like such a comfort. Even the horror games, they can feel like a safe place, because I think escaping and experiencing the worlds here just feels different to modern gaming, and I don't know if that's because I grew up playing them as well. You know, to me there's just something about them. Other covers with big bold colour choices include We Love Katamari and Puyo Pop Fever. These two next to each other I really adore. I think combining these makes this magical, childlike, wondrous world that's just so fun and bright and happy. You know, these games are happy, and that's what these covers are conveying. Happy, fun, enjoyable times. There's also this version of Katamari which has utilised coloured pencil. It's on the front cover, the back, and even the disc art, and it's amazing. I might have actually found one of my favourite pieces of disc art ever. This is something you could obviously display, similar to maybe something like the cover for Ico. This particular cover, that is. Of course. Continuing on, we have busier covers. There's a lot more going on in these ones, and I must say though the colour scheme here for Odin Sphere is so pretty. One of my favourites in terms of the colour for sure. The specific shades they've used work so well together. It's like this really magical feeling. I mean, look at the princess sparkles in the titles, and then these yellows and greens, they all like complement each other. This also reminds me of how pretty the Kingdom Hearts cover is as well. This is just the pretty cover section, I guess, I don't know. And I think we should take a moment to appreciate the Kingdom Hearts covers, and I mean, the Heart Moon is absolutely iconic. I have this as a poster. This is just some of the best lighting I've seen on a cover too. I think this kind of lighting is kind of hard to pull off on something like a cover, but I think they really designed this so well. And the main menu screen in the game is iconic as well, of course, and I'm a fan. I'm a big fan. Anyway, back to Odin Sphere. The disc art is also gorgeous, and the director for Odin Sphere was also the director for Grim Grimoire, which is kind of a hard game to pronounce, but I think you can tell there's some similar vibes going on here. Then we also have Gitaru Man, which has a quirky cover for a quirky game, and I mean, we have Koe to thank for this one, same with Yanya Caballista City Skater, a skateboarding game, which also has this fun poppy cover. Gotta love the consistency. I think pretty often rhythm games all have kind of colourful, bright covers, maybe even just like kind of flat colours, like Cool Tune for the Dreamcast, and some, on the other hand, may have surrealist aspects as well. And I guess in general, fun visuals are important for a rhythm game. I mean, let me think. There's Dog of Bay. 13 is a very classic example of a comic book style cover. It's also one of the few games that cel shaded on the PS2. I love cel shading. The way the gun looks 3D here, like it's really popping out at you, the satisfying square and rectangle layout, the shades of orange and red, it's very nicely put together. The game itself has a gripping visual style, and I think it shows how well taking inspiration from comic books can be used within a game. There's heaps of imagination used here clearly, and that's what I like to see. Rogue Galaxy is another example of cel shading in a PS2 game, along with Beautiful Joe, which also has this great cover. The presentation of Beautiful Joe is highly creative and imaginative. The graphics just kind of feel like they're exploding in a way. Very artistic, very original, worth looking at like a piece of art. The game Hippolinda, aka Stretch Panic, aka Freak Out, is a pretty obscure game with a very unique cover, and actually it has a few unique covers. There's this red one, an orange one, and a purple one. The red one is pretty simple, but it's still a pretty neat design. The purpley one is more action focused and cartoony, and you get more of a sense about what you're going to be doing in the game, which is controlling a demonically possessed scarf. Naturally, the orange one also shows the scarf, but has text on the left which reminds me of a magazine layout. This game was developed by Treasure, who also co-developed Sin and Punishment. Alien Hominid is one of those games that reminds you of the way that Flash games and 2D games and cartoons were in the early 2000s. It's a great style, and I remember playing stuff reminiscent of this in school when I wasn't supposed to. This game was also on GBA, and the artist for Alien Hominid did the art for the game Castle Crashers. We also have games like Graffiti Kingdom and Magic Pengel, The Quest for Colour. Both are games about creativity and design, which is perfect for this video. These games just remind you of toys from your childhood, and Graffiti Kingdom especially, I think, was ahead of its time. And to me it's just a joy to know that these kind of creative games exist in this world. And also there's more to do with music and surrealism with the game Vib Ripple, the third game in the Vib Ribbon series. This is probably one of the wackiest disc designs, and to be honest, a full game is something you have to take a moment to, breathe and then take it in and really try and figure out what you're looking at. Even looking at a bunch of screenshots, it looks weird, but that was the wonder of the PS2. Just imagine picking out these games randomly, taking them home, and then you play this with no expectations whatsoever. It's an experience and feeling that's not as easy to replicate nowadays, and I think a lot of people miss that. Unison, Rebels of Rhythm and Dance also has that kind of font and background I associate with the word groovy. I mean, the outfits in this game are certainly 60s inspired attire, and I don't know why, but these kind of menus with the circle patterns and layouts are just, they're so satisfying. I love looking at this game and taking in that style and the groove, and I think everyone needs a bit of groove in their life. To finish off this section, we have a few more fun ones like Ninja Bread Man and iToy Play, where the games weren't necessarily the highest rated ones out there, but they're very, very nostalgic, and there's this nostalgic feeling about the designs and the style. I just think their purpose was to bring some joy. But anyway, for the end now, another one of my favourites, for sure, is really colourful, fun 3D covers. You cannot go wrong with the design of a lot of these because it's just fun turned up to the max. Just look at this Aqua game. I think this is one of the best covers out there. I don't know, it's just such a vibe. It just radiates fun and happiness, and the colour scheme is perfect, and there's a lovely blue sky, and it gives you this happy summer feeling. The slide is a rainbow, for goodness sake. This is also linked to the game Wet Tricks, which also has a really amazing cover, but yeah, it's just magic to the eyes. It doesn't necessarily tell you what this game is about. I think it's a puzzle game, but the loading screen is also super fun, and that's what matters. Technic Beat is a cover that I think deserves a lot more recognition. This is just the style of the 2000s at its best, and both versions of the cover, you really can't go wrong. You can clearly see though this is a rhythm game, and these character designs are so unique and strange in the best way possible. There's a robot chilling in the back, it's just great. The game Gregory Horror Show could have gone in the horror section, but I feel like it fits more here. The mix of the cartoony style and horror, though, is absolute genius, and I'm surprised there aren't more games like this. The original creator of Gregory Horror Show also created a series called Midnight Horror School with a very similar style. I love the experimentation, and this is again exactly why the PS2 has so many hidden gems. The in-game graphics, the whole design of the menus and interface, and everything feels like you're immersed in this dream world. And as a last piece of information, the person who did the packaging for this game also did the packaging for Dragon's Dogma, which is interesting. Okage Shadow King is a game I've played before, and again it's a style I rarely see nowadays, which is a shame. There's also this ad which I think is really genius. Okage in Japanese means shadow, hence the shadow puppetry going on here. And Ribbit King, this is a very entertaining name for a game that I didn't even realise is a golf game, or a frolf game as it says here. The Japanese cover is adorable and the whole design is absolutely adorable. It's the kind of design you can imagine there being a lot of merchandise for. I also love simple eye designs on cute 3D characters. Jak and Daxter also has that kind of fun cover along with Ape Escape and games like Seven Sins. Now this is a bold cover. You could also technically fit in games here that are based on animated films or series such as Finding Nemo, Up, Cars, Monsters Inc., Kung Fu Panda, Ratatouille, WALL-E, Toy Story, SpongeBob, Bratz even, etc, etc, etc. Yeah, we're gonna finish off with a bang, with covers that resemble fireworks or lights or stuff along those lines. Fantavision is an obvious example, a launch title in fact. It could have been seen as a way to show off particle effects on the PS2, but from what I can see it's also a simple, fun, solid little puzzle game. There's Rez, a rail shooter, and I really like this kind of orange outline for the lettering, that's pretty unique. There's also this other cover with this person? Anyway, I think it's great that these kind of artistic games were still rated highly. They were great games, and I love the atmosphere of this particular advertisement for this game as well. Mojo, with an exclamation mark, is a 2D puzzle game which does have the words graphically stunning on the back cover, so I think we better take their word for it. And I think graphically stunning is something, you know, I would label lots of games with on the PS2. And that is my summary. Exploring the PS2 will most likely always be my favourite console to explore. I think there's so much stuff on here, ranging from the creepy, to the weird, to the unique. And it's honestly such a joy to go through. I had a lot of fun making this video, and I would love to do more style explorations of games in general, or a part 2 to this or something. Thank you for watching, and thank you also so much to my patrons. I have a little bit of extra stuff on my Patreon if you want to support me in some way. If you enjoy this kind of video, maybe you could check out some of my other videos as well, because there's more, I have more, it's a full channel, in fact. I just hope to make, and I do hope to make more on video games very soon. So I'm very, very, very grateful that you've made it this far. Thank you for watching again, and yeah, thank you for making it to the end. Have a good day. Bye bye.